Hello and welcome to The Point World Affairs. I'm Cha Sang-mi. A wall along the U.S.-Mexico border is a testament to President Donald Trump's approach towards illegal immigrants. His administration recently announced a zero-tolerance policy on illegal border crossings, stirring controversy across the country. On today's episode, we'll take a close look at Trump's hardline posture on undocumented immigrants, including its background and implications. With me in the studio for discussion today is a former Congressman, Kim Chang-joon. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome.
And before we move on, let's take a look at a short clip.
U.S. President Donald Trump has been waging an all-out war against illegal immigrants since taking office, pushing forward with plans to build a wall along the U.S.-Mexico border and deploying the National Guard. In May, the Trump administration announced a zero-tolerance policy on the border to prosecute all immigrants for entering the country illegally.
The United States will not be a migrant camp, and it will not be a refugee-holding facility. It won't be. You look at what's happening in Europe, you look at what's happening in other places, we can't allow that to happen to the United States, not on my watch.
The policy resulted in the separation of migrant children from their parents at the border. According to figures from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, nearly 2,000 children were separated from their families at the U.S. border between April 19th and May 31st. On June 18th, the UN Human Rights Council condemned the Trump administration over its family separation policy.
I call on the United States to immediately end the practice of forcible separation of these children, and I encourage the government to, at last, ratify the Convention on the Rights of the Child.
However, the U.S. withdrew from the UN Human Rights Council the next day, citing the Council's quote-unquote chronic anti-Israel bias.
The Human Rights Council passed 5 resolutions against Israel, more than the number passed against North Korea, Iran, and Syria combined.
However, questions remain about Washington's intention as the announcement came just a day after the UN Human Rights Chief denounced the Trump administration's immigration policy. Trump's zero-tolerance policy stirred controversy in Washington. The Democrats criticized the U.S. president, saying he was using the grief, tears, and pain of the children as motor to build a border wall. Even U.S. First Lady Melania Trump weighed in on the debate, making a rare statement through her spokeswoman criticizing her husband's immigration policy.
And I also like to ask you how I can help to these children to reunite with their families as quickly as possible.
But on June 20th, Trump signed an executive order to end family separations at the border by detaining them together.
I consider it to be a very important executive order. It's about keeping families together.
Some believe the abrupt change in course was influenced by First Lady Melania Trump, who was born in Slovenia, while others say Trump bent to intense public and political pressure, even from his own party. However, the U.S. president made it clear his administration would still continue its zero-tolerance policy while keeping a powerful border.
We are keeping a very powerful border, and it continues to be a zero tolerance. We have zero tolerance for people that enter our country illegally.
On this week's The Point World Affairs, we shed light on what is behind the Trump administration's tough stance against illegal immigrants and predict where things are headed.
Now, the zero-tolerance policy, and this has triggered public outrage in the United States, in and out of the United States. So, Congressman Kim, I wanted to ask you, I know you are a former congressman of the U.S. House of Representatives, so were there similar discussions when you were there?
The immigration issue has been always a hot issue. You know that. There's no solution to it. People are still climbing over the fence with family, without a family. How are we going to stop them? And Finally, Trump suggested we should build up the higher wall. I don't think that's going to be a solution. It's continually climbing over. Why is that? Well, economic reason? No, they should come legally. Why they cannot come legally? I wonder why. They must have some bad record. Something's not admissible to the USA. We gotta find out what that is.
So then I want to get to the bottom of this. So what is behind this White House immigration policy? And in your observation, how much support does this policy actually have from the House or the Senate?
Not yet. I understand Mr. Trump fought it to Congress, given 1 month to come up with an idea. If you really disagree with this blunt policy, which is, he just simply canceled the DACA, which is put together by Obama administration. So you don't like it? Well, then tell me what's the best. They haven't done anything yet. Congress is always slow. It might take a little longer, but I don't know you're going to have some unanimous consent out of them. This is a very emotional issue or social issue. You can't have all these illegal aliens coming in and just forgive them. Then what? Well, they are kids, so you got to pay for all these expenses, taxpayers' money. It's been going on, I don't know, ages. That it's a very touchy issue. So I don't think they're going to come up with a simple idea. Democrats may be against it, but it's their program Obama put together. Republicans says, well, you did the right thing to eliminate that and cancel it. Well, I don't know. It's hard to see.
Right. So you're saying that this hardline immigration policy is something unprecedented, even though the immigration issue was always there.
DACA was new. Never had that. Right. What DACA means, when they climb over the fence, they brought the kids with them.
Right.
Well, the question is, what happened to the kid and parents? The parents are arrested because illegal activities. How about this kid? Within DACA, there's a forgiveness there. Some of them, kids become citizens. Then what are you going to do? They've been USA 14, 15 years, and they don't know anything but America. They cannot go to Mexico. They left there when you were a little tiny baby. So USA is their home. Well, how can you send them to Mexico? Well, then no choice, separate them. That is even more immoral. It's a very touchy issue. People are very angry. How can you separate them? Well, then take them with you. That's not possible either.
Undocumented immigrants brought to the United States as children are collectively referred to as dreamers. The Deferred Action on Children Arrivals, or DACA, is a program that shields the dreamers from deportation. Here's a short video about the Trump administration's ongoing push to repeal DACA.
The Deferred Action on Childhood Arrivals, or DACA, is an immigration policy initiated by the Obama administration in June 2012. The policy protects undocumented immigrants who were brought to the U.S. as children, referred to as dreamers. Under DACA, dreamers receive renewable 2-year work permits and are protected from deportation. Nearly 800,000 young immigrants have benefited from DACA.
Program known as DACA that was effectuated under the Obama administration is being rescinded.
But the Trump administration announced in September 2017 that it would terminate DACA, claiming the program led to a surge in illegal immigration and crimes by young Central Americans. The administration also argued that illegal immigrants take jobs from U.S. citizens. Trump's push to repeal DACA has hit a number of hurdles since the beginning of this year. In February, the Supreme Court declined to take up the Trump administration's appeal of a lower court order that requires the government to keep DACA going. In April, a U.S. district judge ordered the administration to restart the program and accept new applicants. All eyes are on the fate of the DACA program, a hotly debated topic that triggered a government shutdown early this year. Republicans have recently unveiled a new immigration bill that provides a pathway to citizenship for dreamers, curbs family-based migration and funds a border wall along the U.S.-Mexico border.
So President Trump was right in his decision. He made the right call. I'm also encouraged by the fact that he gave us time to work out a consensus.
We connect with an expert in the U.S. to discuss the future of DACA along with other relevant issues surrounding Trump's immigration policy.
To hear more on the U.S. reactions, we have Professor Van Tran on the line, an assistant professor in the Department of Sociology at Columbia University. Hello, Professor Tran.
Hi, Sang-mi.
Nice to see you, Professor. We want to know a little more about the DACA program along with the zero tolerance policy. We know that the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, or the UNHCR, is calling it violation of human rights. So why is that so?
The reason why the UNHCR came into the picture and declared that this is fundamentally a violation is because there is, under international law, a provision for those who seek asylum in another country because of a well-founded fear of persecution in their own country due to, either political views or religious practices. So I think at the minimum, one should not assume that those who enter the U.S. Through our border to the south cross illegally, but we always have to give them at least the option of being treated as asylum seekers. And that is really where the human rights violation concern is being raised. And I think that concern is very well placed because what we do know from a lot of research over the last 5 or 10 years is that a lot of the people coming in right now are often from Central America, crossing through Mexico to reach the U.S. soil. And the reason a lot of the people are moving away from Central America is because they were fleeing the tremendous amount of violence and turmoil in their home country. And that, to me, fits the definition of refugees and asylum-seeking individuals. And that is why we must treat them as such until proven otherwise. But what's happening right now is that we are assuming that they are here as economic migrants and illegal crossers and treat them as such without giving them the option to begin with. Now, on DACA is a different topic because DACA refers to a population of individuals who have been in the U.S. for quite some time. Many of them crossed the border many years ago when they were children in a different context when immigration policy is probably a bit more favorable toward migrants. And they have been granted this temporary provision to stay in the country and therefore were given a legal right to work. And that really has improved their well-being significantly. And yet what we're seeing right now is the crackdown on DACA. And that really meant that those who are eligible for DACA are now living in limbo once again because we don't know what's going to happen next to them. That really is still very much up in the air, and we'll have to see what that process would be like as it plays out. However, both the family separation and the DACA policies reveal one consistency within the U.S. Migration policy under the Trump administration, which is this zero tolerance policy towards migrants of all type, and the insistence that we protect our borders by cracking down on the so-called undocumented and illegal. And this is a key aspect of the immigration policy agenda under the Trump administration.
Now, Congressman Kim, I want to ask you about the UN body since we were talking about it. Ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, U.S. Ambassador, she announced withdrawal from the UN Human Rights Council, right? Is this connected in some way with the White House immigration policy?
It's not a White House immigration policy, by the way. So DACA was initiated by Mr. Obama, and he simply repealed this thing. Not permanent basis, but until better solution come up. DACA is not working right. So as a president, he has a right to stop this thing until find some better ways. Now UN, I believe, my opinion, the reason why they decide to withdraw is UN has been kind of biased and overly protect human rights overly exaggerating. I don't know what's happening beyond that. It's just suddenly happened. I didn't read carefully all the way through, but I support the UN resolution, not the United States policy withdrawal. No, almost 25%. The USA is paying for expenses in UN. One time, way back when I was a member, we talked about get out of the UN. Was so upset. I don't remember clearly what happened, but so UN is not functioning, in my opinion. Sometimes I guess it's all human beings bias, and without spending so much money, I don't know result is good or not, but it's certainly disappointed. And well, that's what's happening right now, and I think I have to support when they have decided something like that. It's not a simple decision. They must have a lot of communication with a lot of people in USA, and I'm sure they communicated with the U.S. congressman as well. This is a very touchy situation and decision. So,
Professor, I heard there are 2,000 children who are being in the detention center. So who is being sent back?
What happened over the last 6 weeks and a few months was that the moment the parents were taken into detention, their children were then taken away from the parents and being kept and held separately. Sometimes with a great deal of deception. For example, mothers were told that we're going to take your children to shower, and then the children will never return to the mothers again. So this is heartbreaking. So none of them are being returned right now. They're often being held and waiting to be processed, either by the immigration system, or if they file a claim of asylum seeking, and then waiting to appear in front of immigration judges before deciding whether they're going to be able to stay in detention or removed or convicted as criminals.
Now, Congressman, critics say that DACA program increases number of criminal rates and also takes away jobs from American citizens, the increase in illegal immigration.
Why they come over the fence? Why didn't they come regular process, legal process? I did. It's so complicated. You gotta go to office, embassy office, go through all this paperwork. Questioning is why? They must have some problem, background check. So that's what the Trump administration is saying, that why don't they come legally? Are more than welcome. But why climbing over fence with a kid? Another question is, I'll talk about unemployment. That's not true. Those illegal documents are taking tough jobs, jobs that Americans don't want. And clean up the trash and climb up the roof and cleaning up. And I saw that. So I don't think they really take any jobs away. Matter of fact, they do a lot of work that we don't want to do it ourselves. So that argument I don't think is really true.
Well, Professor Tran, here Congressman Kim is saying that these illegal immigrants should follow the legal steps to come into the United States. But what do you think? What do you think about this DACA causing increase in crime rates and taking away U.S. American citizens' jobs?
No, not at all, because the evidence is the opposite. We know from a lot of very rigorous research on DACA over the last 5 or 10 years that DACA recipients are extremely law-abiding individuals. In fact, there's no evidence whatsoever that the DACA recipients increased the crime rate in the U.S. If anything, one of the criteria for applying to DACA is that you have to be sort of a law-abiding person in order for you to be eligible to apply for DACA status. Most of these are young people in their 20s and early 30s, mostly young people in their 20s, who aspire to an American life that is going to be consistent with our values. Now, on the second point, do they take jobs away from Americans? Absolutely not, because in many, many of these cases, the DACA recipients have already been working. However, They are working in the informal economy and therefore being exploited by employers who took advantage of their lack of status. As a result, they are in New York working extremely hard under very difficult conditions, earning very little money in return. And what DACA has done to them, based on the most recent research, is that once they receive DACA status, their income goes up, their wages go up, they are much more likely to work in a better job, they are much more likely to earn more, and as a result, they are better off. But make no mistake about it, these people already have been working prior to DACA. So the claim that it would take jobs away from Americans is completely unfounded at all.
And now talking about both of these two immigration policies, we see that despite the Trump administration's tough stance on immigration, the number of border crossings are continuously on the rise. So is this saying that this policy is actually ineffective?
Absolutely. It is ineffective because it is bad policy. The reason for this is that immigration into the U.S., but especially immigration from the southern border through Mexico, has always been deeply connected with the economic conditions of our country and not immigration policy. And this is based on 25 years of research that sociologists have been doing about the causes and consequences of migration. So what we saw, for example, is during 2008, at the peak of the most recent Great Recession in the U.S., immigration into the U.S. illegally basically dropped to zero because there were no opportunities in the U.S. There were no economic opportunities, there were no jobs to be had, and the people who were thinking about or contemplating migration from Latin America immediately knew, well, I'm not going to go there because there's nothing there's no opportunity to be had. And what happened today, in this particular moment, is that unemployment rate is at all-time low in the U.S., less than 4%, which is the lowest it has ever been since 2000. And that really is an indicator for how well our economy is doing at this moment. And that generated tremendous demand for labor of all types, of which immigrants are only a small part. So it is very clear to me that the fundamentals behind immigration policy have always been about the economic conditions, because the United States has always been the beacon of hope and opportunities for people from all over the world. And the moment, we signal that our immigration policy is otherwise, as in this zero tolerance policy that has been announced, we are going against the fundamental premise of our culture and our values. And at the same time, producing no impact whatsoever, because the numbers are still rising every week since the announcement of the policy. So instead of going against the social forces that push people to come to the U.S. soil, I think we should treat them with dignity and humanity, and allow them the process of being processed in the U.S. in a way that's consistent with our law and our policy.
Right, Professor, I loved how you mentioned America as a beacon of hope. Thank you for your insights. That was Professor at the Columbia University in New York. Thank you.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Okay, now, Congressman, do you want to add on to this? You seem like you don't agree with him in some of the aspects.
Well, I believe that every country has a border, and they have a right to keep unwanted people crossing border. So they have an immigration law. Everybody should follow that. If somebody coming illegally, we gotta treat them illegal, whatever misdemeanor charges. That's what they're doing. We shouldn't let people come in illegally, and then, his heart is big, and let's just forgive them. You can't do that. Then why we have even immigration policy anyway? Why don't you eliminate that, all of them, and just anybody can come and go? Can't do that. We have our border. We have border patrol. We have a law to protect our land. So as USA, even though Mexico and borderline each other, each country has its own law, own border protection system. I don't want to criticize anybody, but I think it's important for us to understand that.
Let's hope, whether we are Republicans or Democrats, or whether we are from America or not, let's hope that this issue gets solved as soon as possible.
That's right.
Right.
I certainly hope so.
Right, Congressman. Thank you for sharing your expertise with us today. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So this is where we wrap things up for now. We will be back with another global hot issue next week. Thank you for watching.